You dare insult my wife? Ethan's voice thunders, freezing the Pinnacle Strategies lobby. Chicago's skyline glints outside, but inside, tension crackles as billionaire Ethan Carter confronts a smug hiring manager who dismissed Maya Jackson, a black marketing genius, as unfit. What happens when prejudice slams into power? Will Maya turn their bias to ashes? Smash that subscribe button to catch our latest stories and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? London, Lagos, or Los Angeles? Guess how this clash ends. Maya's journey is a blaze of resilience, but the real spark? A twist no one saw coming. Why did Ethan's arrival silence the room? Can Maya reclaim her place? Stay glued for a tale that'll ignite your soul and keep you guessing until the final moment. Share your thoughts and let's keep the fire burning. The Chicago skyline shimmered under a pale autumn sun, its glass towers slicing through the morning mist like blades of ambition. It was October 2025, and at 9:45 a.m., a black SUV purred to a stop before the sleek headquarters of Pinnacle Strategies, a marketing empire known for shaping global brands. The driver's door swung open, and Maya Jackson stepped onto the sidewalk, her red stilettos clicking with purpose. At 36, she was a vision of elegance and fire. A crisp white dress shirt tucked into tailored black trousers, her natural curls swept into a high bun, and eyes that burned with a quiet, unyielding resolve. Maya wasn't just a woman. She was a legend in marketing, the mastermind behind Nike's Run Your Truth campaign that skyrocketed global sales by 25% and UNICEF's fundraiser that pulled in $10 million. Her work wove profit with purpose, threading humanism into every pitch. 3 years ago, Maya had stepped away from the spotlight. Her youngest daughter, Amara, born premature, had clung to life in a neonatal ward, her tiny chest rising and falling under a web of tubes. Maya didn't hesitate. She traded boardrooms for hospital rooms, campaign deadlines for medication schedules. She learned to decipher medical jargon with the same precision she once applied to market analytics. Nights blurred into days as she sat by Amara's incubator, whispering promises to a child too small to understand. Amara survived, her laughter now a daily symphony in their Hyde Park home. Those years had carved something new into Maya, a steel forged in sacrifice, a resolve that no corporate ladder could break. Now, with Amara thriving in preschool, Maya was ready to reclaim her throne. The director of strategic marketing role at Pinnacle was her target, a position tailored to her genius. Inside her SUV, Maya paused, hands resting on the steering wheel. Her reflection in the rearview mirror showed a woman polished to perfection, but beneath the tailored exterior, a pulse of adrenaline thrummed. This wasn't just an interview. It was a declaration. She'd spent weeks preparing, updating her portfolio with campaigns that had redefined brands, completing digital marketing, certifications from Harvard Online, and rehearsing answers to every curveball question. Late at night, while Amara slept, Maya pored over industry reports, her laptop's glow illuminating her kitchen table. She'd even consulted part-time during Amara's recovery, steering a startup to an 18% revenue spike with a single campaign. Her resume was a fortress: 10 years in marketing, lead on 7 global campaigns, a track record of turning ideas into empires. No gaps, only grit. Maya adjusted her silver earrings, slipped her leather portfolio from the passenger seat, and stepped out. The autumn air nipped at her skin, but she barely noticed. Her heels struck the pavement like a metronome as she crossed the plaza to Pinnacle's entrance. The building loomed, a cathedral of glass and steel, its facade reflecting the city's relentless pulse. Inside, the lobby was a study in cold opulence: marble floors, abstract art, and a chandelier that glittered like a frozen constellation. Behind the reception desk, a young woman with a tight blonde ponytail looked up, her smile thin and practiced. "Name?" she asked, her tone clipped, her eyes flicking over Maya's frame as if cataloging an anomaly. "Maya Jackson," Maya replied, her voice warm but edged with steel. I'm here for the 10 a.m. interview with Daniel Vaughn. The receptionist's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her brow creasing. Jackson, let me check. She typed slowly, her gaze darting back to Maya, then to the screen. Right. Take a seat. Someone will be with you. The words were polite, but the undertone was unmistakable. A subtle dismissal, as if Maya's presence was a clerical error. Maya nodded, unfazed, and settled onto a leather bench near floor-to-ceiling windows. The lobby hummed with the comings and goings of suited professionals, their briefcases swinging like pendulums. She checked her watch. 9:50 a.m., early, as always. Across the room, 5 other applicants waited, all white, their tailored suits and confident chatter filling the space. A woman in a gray blazer glanced at Maya, then leaned toward her companion, a man with slicked back hair. She's probably here for something junior, she murmured, her voice low but not low enough. No way she's aiming for the director. Roll. The man smirked, adjusting his tie. Yeah, diversity hire at best. Pinnacle's just checking a box. Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes on the window, watching a flock of pigeons scatter across the plaza outside. She'd heard worse. Growing up in Englewood, she'd learned early that her skin drew assumptions before she opened her mouth. In pitch meetings, she'd faced raised eyebrows when she spoke, as if her expertise needed a second signature. Each slight was fuel, each doubt a spark. Another applicant, a woman with a pearl necklace, joined the duo. I heard they're only interviewing externals for optics, she said, her voice dripping with certainty. You know, quotas. The man chuckled. Waste of everyone's time. Maya's fingers tightened around her portfolio, but her face remained a mask of calm. She could call them out, shred their ignorance with a single sentence, but that would give them power. Instead, she opened her portfolio, scanning her resume as if it were a talisman. Her credentials roared. Lead strategist on Coca-Cola's Share a Coke. Architect of a campaign that doubled a nonprofit's endowment. Let them whisper. They'd choke on their words soon enough. The clock ticked toward 10. The receptionist answered a phone, her voice dropping to a hush as she glanced at Maya. The lobby's chill seeped into Maya's bones, but she sat taller, her posture a silent defiance. She thought of Amara, her daughter's giggle echoing from that morning when she'd built a tower of blocks. That sound was Maya's anchor, her why. This interview wasn't just about a job, it was about legacy. For Amara, for every black girl who'd been told she didn't belong. Maya's phone buzzed softly in her purse, a text from her husband, Ethan. You've got this. Burn bright. A faint smile curved her lips. Ethan, her rock, her titan, knew the fire she carried. She slipped the phone back, squared her shoulders, and waited. The arena was set, and Maya Jackson was ready to fight. The lobby of Pinnacle Strategies whispered with prestige. Each marble tile, each angular sculpture, each muted color on the walls spoke of calculated power. Maya Jackson sat poised near the towering windows, her posture effortless yet commanding, as if she were the one being waited on, not the one waiting. Outside, Chicago's autumn sun fought to break through the haze, casting fractured light across the floor. But inside, Maya could feel it, the shift in temperature that wasn't caused by the air conditioning. It was the kind of chill that didn't touch the skin. It slid beneath it. From across the room, she felt them. 5 other candidates, each draped in designer fabric, each white, each assessing her with that same look. Surprise, then condescension, then dismissal. Their expressions weren't overtly hostile. No, this was something subtler, more poisonous. The unspoken language of entitlement, of disbelief that someone like her had even dared enter their orbit. A woman in a slate-gray blazer leaned back slightly, crossing her legs with casual elegance. Her Louboutin heels gleamed. She must be here for the junior media coordinator spot, she murmured to the man beside her, not bothering to lower her voice. Director of strategy? Come on. Her voice was tinged with amusement, but it carried razor edges. The man chuckled, glancing sideways at Maya with a smirk that curled only half his mouth. His hair was slicked back with intention, his jaw shadowed just enough to seem effortless. Maybe they needed to hit their DEI quota. You know, optics. He stretched his arms along the back of the leather bench like he owned the room. Like, Maya was nothing more than background noise. Maya didn't flinch. She didn't look up. Instead, she smoothed a non-existent crease in her trousers, flipped open her leather portfolio, and calmly adjusted the tab on her resume. Page 3. Coca-Cola. Share a Coke. 14-month campaign. 18% market lift. Translated into 6 languages. Cross-cultural market penetration at record speed. Let them guess. Let them whisper. They were mistaking silence for submission. Another voice chimed in, honeyed performative. Is she with facilities? A woman with pearl earrings whispered to no one in particular. Or maybe catering. She giggled, a sound sharp as broken glass. Maya lifted her eyes just once, and met the woman's gaze. No words passed between them. None were needed. The silence stretched, tightened, snapped like a wire. The woman turned away first, her fingers fluttering nervously over her phone screen. Maya returned to her resume, but her heartbeat was loud now, not erratic, focused. She felt the familiar burn low in her chest, not anger, but power-seeking, form. The kind she'd felt when a global executive had once told her she was surprisingly articulate. The kind that surged when an agency CEO credited her ideas to a junior staffer in a meeting. The kind that had carried her through hospital corridors at 3 a.m., deciphering test results through tears while holding her daughter's trembling hand. It was that fire, quiet but relentless, that steadied her now. The receptionist's voice, shrill and rehearsed, rang from behind the desk. "Ms. Jackson," she called, louder than necessary, as if pronouncing the name marked her as unusual. "You're sure you're here for the 10 o'clock with Mr. Vaughn?" Maya closed her folder, stood, smiled, just enough to be unreadable. "Yes," she said. "I'm very sure." She walked back to the desk, each step deliberate. Her heels echoed off the marble, a counterpoint to the low murmurs that followed behind her. The receptionist blinked, clearly thrown by Maya's calm. "Right, well, he's running a few minutes behind. Please continue waiting." Maya thanked her, her voice as smooth as silk layered over steel, and returned to her seat without breaking. Stride. From the side, she heard the man in the suit mutter, "She walks like she owns the place." His tone was half joke, half jab. She will, Maya thought. She sat again, facing the city. The skyline towered in the distance, a fortress of ambition. Maya had once pitched a rebranding campaign to one of those skyscrapers' top tenants. She remembered standing on the 46th floor, whiteboards full of wireframes behind her, a sea of skeptical faces before her, and walking out with a signed contract. That's what they didn't know. What they refused to see. These whispers weren't new. They were ancient echoes, inherited judgments dressed in modern suits. It was never just about experience. It was about expectation, what they expected her to be, to wear, to say, to need. And because she didn't match their script, she was automatically an anomaly, a threat, a box they couldn't check properly. She breathed deeply and thought of Amara. That morning, her daughter had wrapped her tiny arms around Maya's neck, smelling of cereal and lavender shampoo, and whispered, "You're my supermom." It wasn't just sweetness, it was her why. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Ethan. "Still early. You've got this, Maya. Make them remember you. And if they don't, I will." Maya let a smile slip, not for the room, just for herself. Ethan never had to raise his voice to command attention. When he did speak, it changed rooms. He was the embodiment of quiet force, and when necessary, he was the storm behind her. The lobby door whooshed open again. Another applicant entered, white, mid-30s, full of ease. He scanned the room, spotted Maya, and blinked, then continued. To the reception. More glances, more internal calculations. Maya closed her eyes for just a second. Breathe in, breathe out. She was not new to this. She was not shaken. She had walked into rooms colder than this, darker than this, and left them changed. She opened her eyes, straightened her spine. They weren't ready. But that was never the point. She wasn't here for them. She was here for every young black woman staring at glass ceilings from floors they weren't invited to. For every brilliant mind overlooked because someone saw skin before skill. For every mother told she had to choose between nurturing life and shaping industry. Her name would be the one they remembered, long after the whispers died and the clock ticked closer to 10. The frosted glass door creaked open at exactly 10:04 a.m. A tall, angular man in a navy suit stepped into the lobby, scanning the room with sharp, perfunctory eyes. Daniel Vaughn, director of talent acquisition, carried himself like a gatekeeper to a kingdom he neither built nor questioned. His gaze flicked past the other applicants and landed on Maya with the barest hint of surprise, quickly masked by something colder, displeasure perhaps, or disbelief. Without offering a handshake or greeting, he said, "Maya Jackson, this way." Maya stood, her movements fluid, composed. She followed him through a corridor lined with glass walls and curated silence. Her heels clicked steadily, a rhythmic defiance against the sterile air. He didn't look back, didn't speak, as though even the idea of conversation with her would be misplaced. But Maya had walked hallways like this before. She knew this game, the subtle cues meant to unnerve, the posture of assumed power. He opened a door and motioned her in. The interview room was pristine and cold, like a holding chamber built to observe rather than welcome. A sleek glass table stretched across the room. Two others were already seated. Susan Greer, late 50s, with silver hair coiled into a tight chignon and a gaze that could freeze fire. And Mark DeLuca, younger, distracted, eyes glued to his phone, thumbs moving with disinterest. Maya stepped inside, placed her leather portfolio on the table, and sat. No one stood to greet her. No one smiled. Daniel took the seat across from her. "Let's begin." There was no small talk, no "how was your morning" or "tell us about your interest in Pinnacle." Just the crack of Daniel's voice, dry, clipped, and already leaning toward judgment. "Ms. Jackson, your resume indicates a 3-year gap. Care to explain?" Maya met his eyes without hesitation. "Of course, during that time, my daughter was born prematurely and required intensive care. I chose to step back from full-time corporate work to focus on her recovery. However, I remained professionally active. I consulted for 2 major clients, helped lead a campaign that resulted in 18% revenue growth, and completed 3 digital marketing certifications through Harvard Online." Daniel barely blinked. "So, freelance and online courses?" His tone flattened the word freelance, as if it meant part-time hobbyist, not strategic architect. Maya's fingers rested lightly on her portfolio. Her voice remained even. "High-impact consulting and advanced specialization, yes." Susan leaned forward, arms crossed, her expression tight. "That's nice, but this role isn't about passion projects. It requires navigating multi-million-dollar budgets, real-time market shifts, and C-suite stakeholders. I'm not sure how well those translate from home." From home. The words landed like a slap. Not from maternity leave, not from consulting, not from leading 2 successful campaigns during personal turmoil. From home. Maya's spine straightened a fraction. "With respect, I've managed larger budgets and higher stakes launches than many who've never left their desks. I was the strategic lead for Nike's Run Your Truth campaign, which increased their global revenue by 25%. I've also managed rebranding projects for Coca-Cola and advised on UNICEF's $10 million fundraising initiative. The outcomes were measurable, and the stakes were global." Mark glanced up from his phone, barely interested. Daniel scribbled something on his notepad. Susan gave a tight smile. "We're just concerned, Ms. Jackson, that someone who's been out of the rhythm may not handle the speed and pressure we expect here." "I wasn't out," Maya replied. I was evolving. And pressure? Her voice dipped just slightly, like velvet wrapped around steel. Pressure is not watching a brand's quarterly numbers. It's holding your child's oxygen tube in one hand and your laptop in the other, while redesigning a national campaign. That's pressure, and I delivered. Daniel exhaled slowly, the sound theatrical. Look, this is a senior role, and we've built a very specific kind of culture here. High energy, client-facing, people expect a certain image. There it was. The invisible wall, the polite code, the veiled suggestion that she didn't look the part, that the brand was fine with slogans about diversity as long as the boardroom stayed familiar. Maya leaned forward, not aggressively, but with the precision of someone tired of pretending not to hear what was whispered. And what image, exactly, do you think I don't match? For a second, no one moved. Susan's lips pressed into a line. Mark looked back at his phone. Daniel cleared his throat. I just meant there are client expectations. They expect consistency. I see, Maya said softly, but her words sliced. You mean they expect to see someone who looks like you, not someone like me? Daniel's pen stilled. Susan shifted in her seat. We're simply suggesting, she began, but Maya raised a hand, calm, clear, controlled. No need to suggest, she said. You've made your stance clear. You value perception over performance, legacy over innovation, and comfort over evolution. There was silence. Maya stood, not abruptly, but with purpose. She reached for her folder, her resume untouched on the table, and straightened it carefully. Her voice was quiet now, but every syllable landed like a gavel. Thank you for showing me exactly what I'm not willing to work for. Daniel opened his mouth, some protest half-formed. Maya was already at the door. She paused, her hand on the handle. When your clients start asking why their campaigns lack impact, and your brand voice feels stale, it won't be because of your competitors. It'll be because you chose comfort over brilliance. Then she stepped out. The hallway was still, cool. The receptionist looked up, startled. Leaving already? Maya didn't break stride. Yes, she said, they were done before I walked in. She exited into the sunlight, the city humming around her. A pigeon flapped wildly overhead. Somewhere far off, a saxophone played. Maya pulled out her phone and typed one message. They insulted me. Can you come? She hit send. The screen lit up with a reply almost instantly. Already on my way. She exhaled. The storm had begun. And this time she wasn't walking into it alone. The lobby of Pinnacle Strategies had resumed its hushed choreography. The quiet shuffles of polished shoes across marble, the muted ding of elevators rising and falling like the breath of the building, and the soft murmur of employees too absorbed in their own importance to notice the chill lingering in the air. But Maya Jackson sat motionless near the glass doors, her portfolio still clutched in one hand, like a blade not yet sheathed, her body poised not in retreat, but in recalibration. Her breath came slow and deep, steadying her pulse, even as a storm brewed quietly in the pit of her stomach. She had walked into that interview with 10 years of triumph, folded neatly into a resume, and walked out with a fire that neither Susan's coldness nor Daniel's condescension could extinguish. She had seen this before. Arrogance cloaked in professionalism, bias disguised as concern. But something in their smug dismissal had cut deeper this time, perhaps because she had come not just as a candidate, but as a mother, a builder, a survivor, someone whose time was no longer disposable. The sun shifted behind the clouds, casting a pale glare across the floor tiles, as Maya's phone vibrated again. She didn't need to read it to know who it was. Still, she unlocked the screen, her eyes settling on the message. Almost there, don't move. There was no exclamation mark, no urgency, just certainty. That was Ethan. And even before she could lift her gaze back to the revolving doors, she heard the murmurs shift, the kind of change in atmosphere that didn't begin with noise but with silence, the kind of silence that spread like a warning. Conversations faltered. A receptionist straightened in her seat. A junior associate, passing with a tray of coffee, stumbled slightly, eyes snapping to the entrance. Outside, the wind parted to make way for a machine of matte steel. A limited-edition Tesla Cybertruck, silent but menacing in its perfection, rolled to a stop before the lobby like a panther crouching at the gates. From within, the door lifted, and out stepped Ethan Carter, 40 years old, 6'3", skin kissed by golden undertones, and dressed in a slate-gray vest that hugged the power of his frame without boasting about it. His expression was carved from stone, but his eyes, ice blue, unflinching, scanned the lobby with precision. He didn't glance down at his phone. He didn't hesitate. He walked through the glass doors like he'd designed the building himself, the hem of his coat brushing against the wind, the lobby's temperature dropping a full degree in his presence alone. The receptionist's mouth parted, words forming, but never landing. Ethan didn't stop. He didn't even look at her. His eyes locked on Maya's. She stood slowly, as if guided by gravity's permission, and in that single glance exchanged between them, hers, fire held within restraint, is thunder wrapped in stillness. The entire lobby seemed to tilt. "I'm here to see my wife," Ethan said, his voice low but resounding, the kind of voice that didn't demand silence but created it. The receptionist scrambled for words. Do you have an appointment?" Ethan turned to her with the calm of a lion unbothered by the bark of a distant dog. "Tell Michael Langston the clock has just started," he said, and the words hit like a countdown. At that moment, Daniel Vaughn reappeared in the lobby, adjusting his cuffs, eyes scanning lazily until they fell on Ethan, and froze. His smirk collapsed into confusion, then dread. Behind him, Susan emerged, her posture stiffening as if her body sensed the collapse before her mind could compute it. "Mr. Carter," Daniel began, stepping forward with a smile he had not earned, hand outstretched like a reflex. Ethan didn't take it. "You dismissed Maya Jackson," he said evenly, not a question but a verdict. "My wife." The silence was shattered. Susan's hand flew to her necklace. Mark, now lingering near the elevators, stumbled backward, and a young intern gasped. Before catching herself, Daniel's mouth twitched, trying to rebuild the composure that had just crumbled. "I wasn't aware she—" "No," Ethan cut in, voice clipped like a guillotine. "You weren't. You didn't ask. You didn't listen. You saw a woman, a mother, a black professional with more brilliance in her pinky finger than this. Entire floor combined, and you measured her against your bias." He turned slightly, now facing the receptionist. "Call Michael Langston, now, or tell him Ethan Carter is preparing to liquidate his shares." Panic rippled through the room like electricity through water. Maya said nothing, not because she was silent, but because she was watching the exact moment the power dynamic flipped, watching as the men who had dismissed her shrank, not from noise but from consequence. Ethan hadn't raised his voice, hadn't made a scene, but his presence was a storm so precise it didn't have to rage. It simply made everything else tremble. The elevator dinged. Michael Langston, CEO of Pinnacle Strategies, strode out, face flushed, tie askew, the sweat of emergency already glistening at his brow. He took one look at Ethan and veered toward him like a ship toward a lighthouse, but there was fear in his speed, not reverence. "Ethan," he began, tone overly warm, hands extended like a man trying to calm a bear. "I wasn't informed. You were stopping by." "You weren't," Ethan replied, "but you're informed now." Michael's gaze darted from Ethan to Maya, and then to Daniel and Susan, whose faces were drained of color, as if they'd seen the future and weren't in it. "I'd like an explanation," Ethan continued, "or I pull every cent I've invested by end of day. And I will not be reinvesting. Not now, not ever." Michael looked at Daniel. Daniel opened his mouth, but Maya, for the first time, stepped forward. Her voice was soft but radiant with control. "You asked me to consider a position more appropriate for someone like me," she said, eyes on Daniel. "So let me return the favor, consider the consequences." Ethan turned to Maya and extended his hand. She took it, not out of need, but unity. Together they walked past Daniel, past Susan, past the stunned silence, toward the elevators that only moments ago had delivered their dismissal. Before the doors closed, Ethan glanced once more at Michael. 24 hours, fix it. Then the elevator sealed shut, and the room exhaled for the first time. But the air didn't return to normal. It would never be the same again. The morning after the storm, the executive suite of Pinnacle Strategies was unnaturally still, as though the building itself braced for consequence. Somewhere on the 41st floor, Daniel Vaughn sat frozen behind his desk, his fingers wrapped tightly around a ceramic mug that had gone cold hours ago, while Susan Greer reviewed emails with a face drained of color and dignity. But their fate had already been sealed the moment the elevator doors closed on Ethan and Maya Jackson the day before, and what followed had not been a conversation, but a reckoning. At 3 p.m. sharp, a formal email was issued by CEO Michael Langston. Daniel Vaughn's employment with Pinnacle Strategies had been terminated effective immediately, and Susan Greer would be transitioning into early retirement. The message was sterile, but the meaning behind it burned bright through every floor of the company like a silent alarm. The firm's most powerful investor had demanded change, and change had arrived with the weight of consequence and clarity. By 4 p.m., a second email followed, an offer. Addressed to Ms. Maya Jackson, it outlined a compensation package nearly double the original posting, an executive-level office overlooking Millennium Park, full control of the global marketing team, and a clause granting her authority to oversee a new diversity initiative under her leadership. Attached was a personal note from Michael himself. We hope you'll help us build the kind of future we still need to learn how to deserve. Maya didn't respond right away. She sat at her kitchen table that evening, still in the slate-gray sheath dress from the day before, Amara curled against her side, her little head resting beneath Maya's chin as she slept. The house was quiet, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound cutting through the dusk. Maya stared at the letter, not with surprise, but with a quiet, thunderous knowing. She had not just walked into a room and made herself seen. She had changed what that room was capable of seeing. She accepted the position the next morning, not for vindication, not for ego, but because she had a vision larger than her hurt, and a fire more enduring than their ignorance. Within her first month, Maya launched her first campaign, a global movement titled Be the Change, a rallying cry for brands to align their messaging with authenticity, not tokenism, to elevate. Narratives rooted in real human experience, not marketing optics. Her approach was surgical and fierce. She replaced 2 firm vendors, reshaped the structure of her department, and brought in new consultants, many of whom were previously ignored by the industry for being unconventional. And with every keynote, every boardroom pitch, every client strategy session, Maya reclaimed not only the narrative but the blueprint. Forbes called Be the Change the marketing disruption of the decade. Clients who had once hesitated now raced to align with Pinnacle, and quarterly profits shattered records. Behind every success metric was Maya's fingerprint, not just as a strategist but as a leader of intent, one whose strength wasn't in volume but in vision, one whose calm carved through boardroom noise like truth through glass. And yet Maya remained grounded in the small moments. Each night she returned home to Amara's laughter, to block towers and bedtime stories, to Ethan's embrace and shared glasses of wine on the balcony as the city pulsed below them. There, in the warm flicker of kitchen lights and the softness of home, she shed the armor but never the mission. One evening, as the fall leaves swirled past their windows and Maya reviewed a deck for a new social equity campaign, Amara padded into the room, rubbing her eyes, dragging a stuffed giraffe. Behind her, she climbed onto Maya's lap and looked at the laptop screen. "Is that work, Mama?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, baby," Maya said, brushing a curl from Amara's forehead. "Are you making the world better again?" Maya paused, then smiled, not the polite professional smile she wore in press photos, but the kind that started in her bones. "I'm trying," she said, "one story at a time." Ethan appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea, and leaned against the frame, watching his wife with quiet admiration. He had always seen her fire, not the showy kind that demanded attention, but the kind that lit quietly, steadily, until it remade the landscape. He walked over, handed her a mug, and kissed her temple. "You've already changed it," he whispered. "They just haven't caught up yet." Maya looked out the window where the skyline sparkled like ambition made manifest. She thought of that lobby, the marble floors that had chilled her, the eyes that had judged her before she even spoke. She thought of the whispers, the smug grins, the raised eyebrows. And then she thought of the way their voices had faltered, how power had shifted, not because she demanded respect, but because she embodied it so fully that denying it became a liability. She had not needed to raise her voice. She had not needed to perform rage. Her truth had done the work for her. Maya Jackson didn't just rise, she redefined what rising meant. And though the world had once tried to hand her lesser titles, assistant, quota, diversity hire, she had taken every one of those ashes and built something luminous. Not a throne, not a pedestal, but a path, a bridge, a table wide enough for every woman who had ever been told she was too much, too soft, too bold, too black, too anything to belong. She didn't belong. She led. And now, wherever she walked, the fire followed, not to burn down, but to light up, not to destroy, but to reveal. She was not the exception. She was the spark. And in a world that had tried to dim her, Maya Jackson had chosen to blaze. If Maya's journey lit a spark in you, if you've ever been doubted, dismissed, or told you didn't belong, share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. Thank you for being here, for feeling every moment with us, and for standing with voices that refuse to be silenced. Until next time, stay bold, stay true, and keep the fire burning.